Hey guys, Pete here. So what about these service technicians today? What are we going to do? Where are we going to find them? What does it take to keep them? How can you keep these guys happy? You're going to want to stick around for this conversation.
Welcome to HVAC Greatness, your weekly source for HVAC business excellence. By subscribing and tuning in here, you'll get insider access to proven strategies, tips, and insights for the HVAC business owner who's tired of the stress and frustrations and struggles that are common to HVAC. Let's redesign your new, highly organized, and hugely profitable HVAC business where being an owner is fun again.
Hey guys, Pete Ramsey here, HVAC Greatness. Welcome back to the HVAC Greatness podcast. Hope you guys are having a great day. Be careful if you're listening to this going down the road because this is video. Don't be looking down at your camera. You keep your eyes glued to the road ahead of you and keep that vehicle between the ditches. Today's guest is somebody that I've known for a very long time. We're just going to call him David. Is that okay, David?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. So David, you are a service technician and you've been in the industry not too long, actually. Can you tell everybody about how long you've been working in this industry?
Well, going on 3 years. Currently, I started during the pandemic. I actually got into HVAC. Obviously, my father does HVAC, and I did it right out of high school at a company. But I went away from the trade, tried different things, and when the pandemic hit, I reevaluated what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something that was reliable, something that involved me working with my hands. I personally like breaking a sweat. I like earning my keep, so to speak. And because my father's in the field, I always had like a mentor in case I needed any answers to be questions to be answered. So it all just lined up, and I decided to go in HVAC at the end of 2020.
Okay. Do you work with your dad?
No, in regards to, I'll call him sometimes, and like, if I have a need help finding like a short or something. But other than that, I don't work with him at the same company. No.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So maybe that's a good thing. I know your story, obviously, because we know each other very well. But okay. So you came into the industry during, and this, as business owners, we discovered this too. They came up with this creation called essential services. So when they shut all these other businesses down, well, there are certain services they just couldn't shut down, and heating and air conditioning repair obviously is one of them. So it did open up a lot of people's minds to this, David, and so it does give you a certain amount of, what would you call it, job security or necessity, or a sense of being needed, and there's a lot of different things that happen. So you came into an industry. Now you had other options, right? Why was there anything that specifically kind of, pushed you over into HVAC, or was it timing? How did that play out?
Yeah, I mean, timing has a lot to do with it, but overall, I knew I wanted to get into one of the trades. But what I liked about HVAC is that it kind of ties all of them in together. You learn about electrical, you learn about plumbing, you learn about structural, and it's a very unique trade, and it's in demand. And obviously my father being in the trade, that definitely did help me make that decision more so. But I would say because it involves other aspects, it's not just so specific in one thing, like you're just doing electrical or you're just doing plumbing. You
Yeah.
got all that plus the refrigeration cycle and everything.
Yeah, it's definitely not one dimensional. In fact, the learning curve on this has taken a while, and if you're less than 3 years, I guarantee you feel like you're still a baby in the industry sometime. I know, because it just seems like, when I was in it for 10 years, my first 10 years, it seemed like I was still learning every day. But yeah, so great. So you went into work for heating and air conditioning, and then it was you lived happily ever after. Is that right?
Yeah, it's pretty well said.
So your world's perfect right now. No
Uh,
problems.
no, we have a kind of joke going around. We come in on Mondays, and a lot of the guys are like, living the dream,
Living the dream.
but yeah,
And so that's funny because it's sarcastic, right? So it's not,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
we're being sarcastic, yeah, a little bit. But, I mean, work is work, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't mind, rolling up my sleeves and going to work. I'd actually prefer a day where I have to change out a compressor and I'm sweaty and I'm dirty, as opposed to, as they call it in the industry, a gravy day, where it's kind of like easy. And don't get me wrong, those are nice every now and then, but because I'm still new, I just have this like pressure that I hold on myself to where I'm like, I gotta learn. I gotta get the ball rolling because I am new, but I'm also a little bit older than your average new uh, apprentice. A lot of guys, maybe they're right out of high school, right out of college. I started at the age of 30. I'm 32 right now. So because I'm maybe a little bit more mature than your average young technician, I'm a little bit more driven and wanting to get the ball rolling, the momentum going. I really don't want the gravy days. I'd rather just be busy every day, and just because I know that's going to just accelerate my learning curve.
Yeah, and I think that's wonderful. And I don't think that you're typical. And I'm going to tell you why. I coach a lot of business owners. I'm in a mastermind group with a lot of business owners, and employee uh, uh, challenges are one of the biggest problems right now. And getting somebody who even wants to learn, it can be a challenge. Getting them to put their phone down and get off social media and actually look and try to learn something, for some people is a real challenge. And I hear somebody like yourself, obviously you are more mature. You're not 20 nothing, you're 30 nothing, but which is still young for me. But the point is, you've been around, you're mature, you understand that these things will, help you as a professional as well as, whoever you're serving. But you mentioned you have coworkers. Can you touch briefly on how many other techniques? Because I'd like you to, you don't have to say any names. I'd like to get you to share some of what these guys are thinking, what's going through their heads, because we've got a problem as an industry right now. And so if we can get you to kind of, share a little bit about what you think, sure, but let us know what some of the other guys think, especially if maybe some of them are perceived as having a bad attitude. And then maybe even guys that from the parts house, it really doesn't matter. But the things that you're hearing in your service technician world that we business owners may not be privy to hear because they're not going to tell us like it is, right? And so can you kind of lay it out? Well, first of all, what kind of work are you doing in heating and air? Is it residential? Is it commercial? Do you do any really big stuff? Is it a mixture? And then about how many technicians are on your team service wise?
Okay, well, I'd say there's about 7 to 8 service technicians and about the same for install, and they keep us divided. I mean, there's like 1 or 2 guys that go back and forth, and I'd say
Between service and installation.
yeah,
That's pretty
yes,
normal. Sure.
yeah. And amongst the service, I've noticed there's a young group, which I'm the oldest of the young group, and then there's an older group of about 4 guys that are actually they're in their 60s, about to retire. So I feel like there's this wealth of knowledge amongst their older guys, and this, the younger group, there's some good technicians, but there's a big gap in between us. And we're different generations too. So when we work with each other, the young guys, we all get along, but overall you just see the difference in the different generations of when you're working with someone, who's been doing HVAC their whole life. They just have a different way of going about things, which is good. But at the same time, I don't know, that was a deep question you asked. I'm trying to go back to, you mentioned there was about 7, 8 service technicians. In terms of what I do, I say as a mixture. It definitely started off as residential, just doing preventive maintenance, and then going over to commercial, mainly maintenance, service, some service calls, breakdown calls. But I would say that was part of my frustration, and I mentioned this to my upline, that they were just giving me just maintenance stuff, and I was like, can y'all like throw me a bone, so to speak? And and they did.
Wow.
They kind of threw me out there in the woods, and I was getting calls, and that's what I enjoyed, because it was like, I was active, critical thinking, and that's where I'm learning the most. You can watch YouTube videos of breakdown calls or read the book, but no, there's no substitute for actually being in the field and catching those calls and actually looking in front of the furnace, trying to, the sequence of operations. Just, you really got to do that hands-on learning. And that's what I was asking for. And lately I would say it kind of comes in waves, but I've been getting much more, hands-on experience with catching calls, dealing with different systems, everything from straight ACs to heat pumps to gas furnaces. And on the larger side, they have been giving me a little bit of experience with dehumidification systems like Dectrons, Orescos for pools, for hotels, some chillers and a little bit of boilers. But for the most part, I mean, it's very spread out, but I would say overall, I would say I feel most comfortable in just a residential setting. When I get to bigger equipment, it can be a little bit intimidating, but I do try to remind myself that it's all the same. It's just on a larger scale, in terms of refrigeration cycle and everything like that.
Yeah, so great stuff. I appreciate you sharing all that. So we kind of have a feel. There's one thing though you kind of skimmed over, just for clarification, that age gap. So if you're the oldest of the younger group, what is the youngest of the older group?
The youngest, I feel like he just turned 21, and then there's about 20, like 26, 21's at 30. But there's about one, two, three, four. There's like five of us,
Okay,
but
in the younger group, and when you get into the older group, how much of an age gap is there? You said six,
um,
all in their
one,
60s, or
yes, someone in their 60s about to retire, and I'd say the one person who's in the middle, he's the service manager. He's like in his mid 40s, and
okay, so
he's
you do have
yeah,
a service manager.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
and those guys that are in their 60s, have they been with the company a long time, or do they come in older?
I'd say with these guys, there's two or three of them that have been with the company their entire careers, and there's another guy who who's been with other companies, but I remember him and I had a conversation, and he said that he came to this company because he was getting burnt out working at other companies. They were just working him to death, and he was traveling. And he said that he took a pay cut to come to this company. And he's a great technician, but he's a little bit older, and he just kind of wants to kind of just coast for the remaining years.
Got you. Got you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what I was looking for is, um, it's an older company, right? So if these guys have been with them their whole career, so guys in their 60s, this business has got to be at least 34 years old. And so they've been around a while. And so people tend to stay with them. But there seems to be, there seems to be that gap in the middle, except for the service manager, that people, when they get to a certain age, they're leaving. Is that what's going on, maybe?
Yeah. And that's kind of like the elephant in the room, so to speak. It's even known
Yeah.
amongst everybody that I even had the CEO say in our meetings, I hope you guys don't, leave. It's kind of like a little joke of, you know, they kind of complain that they'll train someone up and then they kind of leave to go to another company, to go to a place with better benefits or better pay. And it's one of the things of, you even hear it amongst the other technicians. Hey, if you want to make more money, you got to go somewhere else. But
Yeah.
they do value themselves as being a very family oriented company. A lot of the technicians are married and they have kids, so there's really no what do you call it, pullback if they have to call in because their kid is sick. They really try to see you as a human and not just a number like the larger companies, which that's what I'm hearing from their side. It
Right.
doesn't mean that other companies won't value that you have children and a wife and a family.
So it sounds like a good company. I mean, if people are taking cuts to come back so they're not getting burned out, that probably means that, what's the opposite of being burnt out? It means they're having to hustle. And why are they having to hustle? They're getting pressure. And why are they getting pressure? Maybe it's to generate enough money to validate their high wages, right? So that makes sense, just from a business standpoint. But I've seen that a lot as well. Every company has its own culture. And it sounds like you're working with a company that's very family oriented and they have some strong values. But it also sounds like you've got some challenges in that younger generation that maybe they're not wanting to kick back or take it easy or whatnot. Maybe they want a little bit of hustle. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is that close?
Yeah, I would say, and I can only really speak for me, personally. Like, of course, I want to be proactive in my skills because in my own way, I feel kind of behind. Even though I'm not technically in terms of how long I've been doing it, and I feel like I am on track. But I do want to be, proactive and catch as much calls as I can and learn from many different systems as I can. But with the other guys, there's the younger group is they're pretty really good group of guys, but I would say a few of them, they're what do you call it? Their family is in the company, so I don't see them going anywhere.
Yeah.
So they would be kind of stupid to go somewhere else. So, but there has been a trend of other guys in the past leaving, getting trained up and leaving the ship, so to speak.
So, what kind of frustrations are techs faced at that organization? Well, let's just say, don't say any names, obviously, but what do they get frustrated about? What do you hear? And it can be people that your competitors too. I'm sure everybody does. What do they seem to be frustrated about? I mean, let me plant the seed. First of all, I think the obvious thing in this conversation is you're wanting to grow and you feel like you're getting held back, and I can sense that. You want to be shown stuff, you want to learn stuff, but because you're new, right? So they probably have you in a capacity where they can make money off of you, so a lot of maintenance and stuff like that. Am I anywhere close to right?
Yeah, no, you're definitely
Yeah,
right. It's
yeah.
I
But
feel
they
like
need.
they don't really I don't really get pushed until I like speak up and say something, which is on me. I take full responsibility, and I have been doing that. But it's also that thing of like I'm like, do they not want me to grow? And I feel like they do, but at the same time, it's I would I'm just kind of surprised that I have to really go out my way to make the initiative, as opposed to them being like, handing me, job opportunities um, that I know that I need to learn, as opposed to me going to them, be like, hey, can you guys give me, bigger jobs, more challenges? I'm
Yeah.
really asking for the challenges.
What would happen if you were given those challenges and you were allowed to continue to grow? What would that do for you, do you think?
It would, it would, it would make me feel like I'm more involved. It make me feel like they trust me more. They want me to learn. It make me feel like they're like, um, they want to maintain their investment, so to speak. That's the way I kind of see it. It's just
What about from your standpoint? What do you get out of that?
with being like challenged
Yeah,
from
yeah, growing and going
oh,
to
it
see
makes
stuff for
well,
good.
it's just like progress, like progress is like really is like another form of like happiness. It's like when you feel like when you know that you're progressing, that to me is like fulfillment, as
Yeah,
opposed to doing the same thing, you know, the same routine service calls. And I get it. Those calls are, they're a part of the integrity of, what the company needs to pay the bills.
yeah,
But at the same time, it can be, that is a frustration that I see amongst the young guys of kind of that routine thing of just kind of like another day doing the same thing over and over and over, and you just kind of want a change of scenery, so to speak.
yeah. It reminds me of back in the '70s and '80s where factories were really popular, and you get your job, on the assembly line, and you put your widget on, and you did it every day, every day, every day. But man, they paid so well that people stayed. They stayed for the money, even though they hated the work. And so,
Yeah, and
obviously,
it's kind of get to that point where it's like, is it worth, sometimes we joke about it, like, is it worth it? Again, not saying any names, but there's one of the younger guys, he's open to me, and they talk about applying to other places, other, not even HVAC companies, but other fields. They're actually questioning if this is what they should be doing.
so
You
there,
know, it,
yeah, we're seeing people leave the industry for sure.
yeah.
And is it about the money? Because you mentioned that it's boring, it's repetitious at that early level, but obviously looking around, if you just look at your coworkers, you'll get your shot. If you're just patient. But do you think they're impatient, or is it about what is it? What's the real motive? Is it the money? Because everybody thinks it's the money. I mean, I know that's part of it, but I'd love to hear that in your words, and what others are saying to you. Is it the money?
Mm, I mean, of course, money, we live in a world where money is, a huge medium. As a man, as
Oh
a
yeah,
provider, we look out there to go out and get the bacon, as they say. So I would say it kind of can hurt when I would say, like maybe about a year ago, I heard through, other technicians, through supply houses, that other companies not that far from my company were paying brand new guys that had no experience more than what I was making at the time,
right.
almost more than what I'm making now. And it's like that. It's kind of like a slap in the face of like, how could these other companies a couple miles from us pay a helper more than what they're paying me? And I've been here, 2 years. And it was a thing of kind of like, are they not being honest with us, or it felt like they're kind of hiding something, or is it like, am I not generating that amount of money, you know?
let me tell you what comes into my mind, and I do not know. Um, but the neighboring company, I think, is that the company that you mentioned earlier that has a similar name to the company you work for, but different?
Um, no, this company in particular I'm thinking of is more closer, but the other company I mentioned that you're talking about, that's a giant company, and I've heard,
Okay.
you can go on Indeed and see all the HVAC companies, and that company in particular, they're offering massive sign-on bonuses
Yeah.
during for
Yeah.
this time of the year. Trying to get new technicians like that, and our company in particular, we had the owner just come in and say, hey guys, put out there, tell people that we're hiring and just tell them it's a good place to work. No
Right.
incentive, no sign-on bonus. If anything, the beginning of this year, the new year, new me thing, I kind of felt like Jerry Maguire and Tom Cruise and Jerry Maguire, where I sent out a memo,
Show me
an
the money.
email. Yeah, pretty much. And I sent out some points, and lo and behold, I mean, the CEO did answer, three of the four things I mentioned, and it did make an adjustment. And I was actually and that to me, but because this individual did make these adjustments in play, that I was, you know, it said a lot about our relationship and that they're willing to make these adjustments. It made me feel, valued. Because if they didn't
Yeah.
do that, I probably would have not be at the same company I'm at right now. I would have
So,
ventured off.
so you saw some problems with the company. You took the time and formulated in an email, uh, what was it, 4 different issues, and four different, you proposed 4 different solutions that the company maybe should do instead of what they are doing. And immediately on the very next company meeting, the CEO announces changes in the company.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Yeah, they did.
So, so it sounds to me like, yeah, first of all, your input is valued. Um, but it sounds to me like they understand the need to keep employees satisfied. It is there one area that perhaps they're closed minded to that you wish they'd be more open minded with when it comes to the technicians and maybe how you're paid or how you're rewarded or how the culture is treated, or is there any particular area that's difficult for the company that you work with?
Yeah, I would say specifically it would be in regards to they don't like the word commissions. They just want to give you paid by the hour. In our company, they
Okay.
do give out, maybe a once a year bonus, which they say is not guaranteed. It all depends on the production of
Sure.
the company, but we just get paid hourly. And again, they tell us this from an angle of we don't want our guys to be sales guys, because all that's the other thing in my area
Yeah.
or in most cities is these technicians are just trying to sell you new equipment. If the
Yeah.
unit's 7 years old or older, they're just trying to get you a new unit.
Yeah.
And and again, I don't want to sell anything that anybody doesn't need. However, there could be, little examples for they call it, different levels for repairs. It could be something as simple as a contactor or a capacitor, that you don't get any additional pay if you upsell that on a planned service agreement. So if I'm there doing a maintenance agreement, cleaning the coils, doing the routine maintenance, and I happen to find something that I would recommend to the customer
Yeah.
that could potentially prevent a future breakdown call, I wouldn't get anything to make that quote unquote upsell. And I have mentioned that to try to, see if they would offer us an incentive, because to be frank, granted, yes, it is my job to go there and perform the routine maintenance, but there's not much incentive of, should I, if I made, even if it was a couple extra dollars, it would just be like, it'd make me feel more appreciative that, I would go that extra mile. But now that there's no incentive, if I see a capacitor and it's a 35 and it's, at 30, 32 or 33, I could kind of push it to sell it, because it is getting weak according to the manufacturer. But at the same time, a part of me is like, what's the point? I'll just, I don't see the real, you know, initiative to do so other than just not getting a call back.
Yeah. So let's clarify. It's not that you don't care about the customer. Um, and it's not that you're not being compensated. Are they hourly there? They pay by the hour? You get paid by the hour? Okay.
Yes.
So you get paid by
You
the
get paid by the
hour.
hour. Yeah.
And so you're going to make the same money regardless of how, what the ticket is. And if you do sell something additional and the ticket goes up, your pay still stays the same. And you probably know what the parts cost. And so that can probably be a little bit sore. So I get that. You turn a $400 repair into $1,000 ticket, and then but you still make the same money. Or maybe you worked overtime and you picked up another half hour, an hour of overtime rate, which comparatively speaking is probably not enough. But when you look at what the company's making. And I've seen that a lot. And I'm not going to go in and try to resolve all these in this conversation, because that's not what this is about. It's about your perception. Let me plant this seed. If these other companies are paying sign-on bonuses and everything else, and they're paying technicians more over there than they're paying you, do you think that, or have you seen, are those companies charging more for the repairs than you are? Or are they pretty close or approximately similar? What would you say?
From what I've seen, I would say the other companies are charging a lot more than what we're charging for the most part overall.
On repairs?
For the same parts, I would say it's a good portion. I don't know what percentage, but
Okay.
yeah, they're definitely charging more.
That would be interesting to see, because I can see taking money from a more profitable department and reinvesting it back over into the recruitment side and bringing in some young techs, and I could see how that would work if those techs turn into selling techs and they generated more money. So then it would be a machine. I can see that. And unfortunately, there are a lot of companies that are just money, money, money. And no knock to the hustlers out there that are, earning, good money, but sometimes it just goes a little bit too far. So you got that one extremity where commission. Your company sounds like an honest company, family and everything else. And they don't even want to pay any commissions. You're thinking that maybe there's a balance somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I would like to think that, because times are changing, and the company, I really do like the company I work with.
Okay.
I like the people. I do feel like they come from a good place, and they are doing a good job of training. But I just feel like it's a little bit slower than what I'd like in terms of what my goals are and everything. But when it comes to the pay, yes, I would say that most other companies I hear about are offering more incentive, even if it wasn't, just straight commission. Because again, from what I've heard with the company I'm at, they don't want us to be just to turn into a salesperson.
Yeah.
And if anything, that's, I've even said that, or I've heard other people say that, other technicians saying that, ma'am, we get paid by the hour. This is just what I found, and that's actually a great angle to approach a customer that way.
Sure.
Whether the customer believes it or not, it is the truth, and it kind of shows in your language and everything, regarding the repair, that I'm just more so a technician, not a comfort advisor.
Yeah. You can read that in body language. To your point, that's an excellent point. Okay. So money aside, and in your business, your company specifically aside, because like you said, some of the other guys in town, what frustrates Texas today?
Being on call.
Being on call.
Yeah.
James, since I was on call. Yeah.
I would say, no, that's just part of the job. But I mean, in general, you think, or just with what I'm experiencing? Because,
well, there's a lot of people that aren't even coming into heating and air. Why would anybody want to come do what you do?
it's funny. Whenever I talk to people outside of work, they're like, oh, what do you do? And the two things that I get a lot when people find out I do HVAC is, one, you must make good money, and two, that's really hard work.
Right.
And a lot of people are like, oh man, I know people that done that, and that's, you're in the attics, you're in the crawl spaces. And if you look at what a technician does or an installer does, it really is a very broad form of skills. You need to understand the refrigeration cycle, which takes a lot of time. You need to be able to understand basic flow, electricity, plumbing. Your body has to physically be able to get to the space to work on the equipment.
Sure.
If it's hot, you got to work in the heat. If it's cold, you got to work in the cold. You got to work with people, 5 o'clock traffic. And I would say with my company, they're an old school company and they just now started implementing the new software. So when I first started the company, I didn't have to collect any money. It was go in, do the repair, they'll send you a bill, which was very hands free. But now, because we're doing the software, now it's kind of like the other technicians make the joke of, oh, now we're bill collectors, and you're
Yeah.
dealing with customers trying to collect card information, checks, which is fine. You should pay for the stuff as you go. But it's one of the things that, in terms of the technicians are talking about, it's like, what are they doing in the office? We're doing more and more work every couple of months. They're asking more and more of us, but yet, we're not getting paid anymore.
So
That's
does,
kind of what's going around amongst the technicians.
yeah. So change is hard for everybody. And it's human nature to resist change, but something you said, what do they do in the office? Does management behavior, what you see the bosses do, does that have any bearing on the attitude of the technicians, or do they really care?
I would say it definitely does more so than maybe they think in the office. Like if and again, it's a kind of a weird thing where if I see, like in my company, again, not to give too much information, but they have the original owner, which is
Sure.
retired, who
Okay.
who was a technician, who was in the field. I feel like he led from the front, he led from the trenches, so to speak. And then the new owner is comes in when they want, leaves when they want, and it kind
Right.
of has that thing of just like it makes it hard of like to follow that person into to to go the extra mile for them, because I don't feel like they're doing it for us, so to speak. They just kind of do what they want when they want, and it does kind of circle around where the guys are like, well, I want to come in late, I want to work from home. We joke about it, but obviously as a technician, you can't work from home. You're going to need someone there out there on the road, doing the jobs.
So the leadership is obviously important. I can relate to that. I'll tell a quick story because you're doing most of the talking. One of the last companies I worked for, it was a company, and the guy that owned it, he always dressed really nice, and he came into work, real nice golf shirts and slacks, and he was an engineer, or at least he said he was, and I've heard customers say he was not. Our commercial accounts, but very I don't want to say arrogant, very self-assured, very confident. And there was a building addition going on in the back. And I remember walking out with him, and he says, let me see how my building's coming. And there we were, still dirty, had our uniforms on. There he is, all real nice shoes. And he's sticking his chest out and he's looking around. And I remember being turned off by that. It's like, I'm doing all the work. You jerk. And I didn't put words on it all the time, but at that time, but my very last job I went to work for, there was a guy, and he had probably 4 techs. I think I was the 5th one, but he worked in the field, and he would jump in there, and he was right in there with you and knock it. I remember I got off on this, and I got excited, and I'd work harder. And just having the guy work beside me got me fired up. And I remember thinking, man, that other guy wasn't like this. This guy's cool, And of course, I'm a young guy. I'm probably 25, 26 years old at this point. But that's what I thought of when you said that. Leadership. If you're rolling in at 7 a.m, whatever time you have to be in there, and they come rolling in, whenever later, and one of the guys happens to be in the office, and they're telling everybody, can you believe he didn't come in until 10 o'clock today? Is that the kind of stuff that happens?
Yeah, it's definitely, yeah, you hit the nail on the head, and it makes me think of like, with any sport. I've had coaches that they just sit there and tell you to run, and I've had some coaches that would run with you, and those are always my favorite coaches. You would go
Right.
harder, you go further for them because they're there with you, and it's just I'd say it comes down to respect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think? We're getting towards the end of our time that I promise you we cut down. What do you think that, let's just say, look, there's different kind of techs out there. There's different kind of young guys out there. What do you think would really make them not mind the work, maybe not mind a little bit of overtime, not mind being in there and doing the harder work? What do you think is missing? What do you think would help? Is it?
For me, no, go ahead.
Well, I'll tell you an example. I've got a guy, and I can't say any names, but he's a business owner, and he hires a guy, and he gets him all the way up about 3 years, and then just totally caught him off guard. Guy quits, goes work for a competitor, $2 an hour more, and he says, why? He says, irreconcilable differences. In other words, we just can't work this out, and he never even got any feedback from the tech, but he never asks. He never asks how they're doing. And as a leader, I had 14 employees, when my business was at its largest. My favorite size was about 8. We just seemed to really click. And, getting involved in their lives really seemed to make a difference back then. What about today? I mean, has it changed? People not want you, you don't want management in your business. You don't want them asking how you're doing, or do you invite that kind of stuff? I'm not trying to lead you. I'm just throwing my old memories in, because it's been a while for me. It's not like it is for you 100%, but I suspect it's similar. I don't know. What do you
No,
think?
it is similar, and it definitely does feel, I've had, the owners ask me how I'm doing. Maybe they could tell I was down or something, and they are very, kind people, and I feel like that is important. You don't want to just be just seen like a number, but I would say, um, to answer your question, for me personally, the one part I would say is the financial part. I feel like for all that, that I'm doing, all that I'm sacrificing in terms of time, we make the joke about on call, but you are sacrificing your extra hours for that whole week. And is it really worth it? Sometimes we always make the joke of is catching a call, because I've caught calls at 2, 3 in the morning, with some of our customers. They are priority, and it's big commercial accounts for, internet hubs that have the air conditioning run 24/7. And
Oh
it's
yeah.
one of the things where it's like, even if I'm getting paid time and a half, is it really worth it to be getting woken up at 3 in the morning to catch a call? And then I don't see the bill, but I hear about the bill. I hear about how much they're charging. And it's that thing of like, it would be so more worth it if that was my own. It makes me, I don't know, it's a torn thing because everybody's different. But for me, it's like I almost feel like I'm at a fork in the road where it's like, if I'm going to keep doing this type of work, I'm either going to do it for myself, because that, to me, that's when it's worth it. It's like, it's the work is worth it when you're getting compensated for what you're charging. But when you kind of find out that you're getting the short end of the stick and you're doing all the work, it makes you feel unappreciated. It makes you feel undervalued, and it makes you look at not just at different companies, but at different fields. I even went to the gas station the other day, and I saw that they're hiring. It was cashier, but they're almost making as much as I'm making. And I'm like, I don't have to go under a house. I don't have to sweat in an attic. I don't have to get electrocuted. I don't have to drive with, I can just sit there and just, you know, chill. But granted,
Yeah.
the argument could be, okay, that's not a real career as opposed to HVAC or recession proof, and you got to weigh out your pros and cons. But it is one of the things I've seen, guys leave while I've been there. Even though I've been there, relatively short time, I've seen other guys come and go to different fields, different companies, so
Yeah. Well, it's not like if you're a cashier at the gas station, you can go make a little extra money on the weekends, doing side cashiering. I remember
well,
the first
yeah,
time.
yeah.
go, go ahead.
No,
Well,
no, but you mentioned the side thing of, well, that's the other thing. And I know all, business owners, no, they're not stupid. They know that their guys have given the opportunity. My family, my friends know I do HVAC, and I've had, people reach out because they're going to hire someone. They'd rather, pay me to do it. And it could be a basic thing. And even though I know they tell us it's frowned upon and not to do it, everybody does it. But it's one of the things, once you do your kind of little side job and you see how much you made doing the same thing you've done, while it does kind of, you know, plant a seed and you start to water it. But then again, that's all on the individual if they just want to, maintain that on the side, or if they want to take that next step, that leap of faith, and, get their license and try to have their own business.
yeah, that gap's pretty broad. I think my first experience was I'm coming home from work, and there's a big, this is a long time ago, huge window unit on the side of the road somebody had thrown away. And and I was in my van coming home, and I just pulled over the side of the road, picked that sucker up, put it on the back, and then and took it on home. And I got to looking, it was a bad condenser fan motor. We had an account over at this motor shop. It was a double shaft, one for the condenser, one for the blower, and $60 back then. And I took it over to my grandpa's shop, put it in, started running it, and it blowing this cold air. And grandpa walked over to me, says, "I'll give you $250 for it." And I go, "Sold." I just made $190. I made $8.50 an hour back then.
Wow.
It's a long time ago, and that was probably comparable to what you're making today in if you compared, because I think that was within my first 3 years. So but that gap, so when you have this huge gap and you see what appears they're making, and what you're making, what they pay for the parts, there appears to be that gap. I will say this, and I want to throw this in for listeners. It's not what it appears. The cost of doing business is quite expensive, but if we're not happy and cashiers are making more at the gas station than our technicians that are out there working hard we got us an industry problem, and we probably need to be creative on how to do this. I mean, if the company you're working for, let's say that they had a strategy, and when you did harder work, you made more money. And you did inconvenient work like that 2 and 3 in the morning, you made really good money, right? Minimum of X amount of hours or something. And when you did that additional stuff, you got a piece of that. Would that kind of make you tolerate it a little bit? I don't want to say like the factory worker I talked about at the beginning of our conversation, where it's just, I'm there, I'm doing the work, but the money's just so darn good, I can't quit. But in a certain way, I think that we have to realize that people are, they're hitting that point where they're just not happy, and the money does take away or make the pain bearable.
No, you're absolutely right. I would say that would be that would help a lot more guys stay and stick around if, during those hard days, those hard, like you mentioned, if an extreme, situation, you had to catch a call, if there's an incentive that you're not just going to get regular pay or double, maybe double pay or triple pay, that would, you'd have that motive and incentive to, go get the job done. Or again, if they don't want to, I would much rather have my pay, depend on how I perform, as opposed to just, getting a higher per hour flat rate pay. Granted, because what we do is seasonal, we're subject to the weather, so to speak. So during those, you got to capitalize on, the opportunities when they come, but it's just a balance of.
Yeah. Well, that should be your burden. That's a management burden.
Yeah.
And what have you. So as we wind down, does it ever happen? Is anybody on your team ever frustrated or mad and they never say anything to the bosses?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
All the time. Okay.
Yeah, I kind of, if a lot of guys, they vent out and you hear about it and I've heard plenty of guys say, "Man, I just, and there's even people that I've heard through, not directly, but through the grapevine. And again, you take it all,
Sure.
the grain of salt, that people that I never would have thought would, get close to snapping, that they would, they've had it,
Yeah.
So I know it kind of makes me feel better that I'm not the only one, but at the same time, I'm like, dang, we're all kind of feeling the same way, but no one's really talking about it.
Is there ever a situation when management comes in oblivious and they're just smiling and thinking everything's good, but there's really something there and they just can't pick up on it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. And I also think that at this point, David, what we're talking about is differences in leadership level, skill set, and learning as a business. As a technician, you have to grow, right? So in these other capacities, they have to grow too, and unfortunately, they don't have the proper guidance, and they're not. They're you can't fix something that you're not even aware of. And so until people start to leave, that's when they start to wake up. And I think it's what we're seeing. I think people are leaving the industry, and I think that conversations like what you and I just had are. And by the way, we probably need to, if you don't mind, maybe pick this back up, because I didn't even get into some of the deeper stuff that I really wanted to ask you. But everything that we talked about today was really important for build a good foundation in the conversation to begin with, because clearly you're in it. You're there right now, today, dealing with this stuff. And, for me, I work through other business owners, and then they see their technicians through their, lenses, if you will, through their filters. And, it's not accurate. And something's going to happen regardless. Does this make any of your team want to go in business for themselves?
I feel like, I keep a lot of it to myself. I have said certain things to some guys, but a lot of guys that I've worked with, they're more content with staying where they're at. I feel like I'm kind of one of the only ones that wants to take that leap of faith,
Sure.
and do my own thing. But I mean, there's pros and cons to it both. Like, again, it's
Yeah.
like an old saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I would say that's a good company. There are good companies to go far with. There's less to deal with in terms of, having to bear all the weight. If you're a one-man army starting out, you're on call 24/7. I've thought about all that, all the pros and cons of it. But it's again, it would make it if the company operated a little bit better with their pay, and and treating their technicians with more like incentive and making me feel more valued, then I wouldn't really be thinking as much as starting my own company if they, quote unquote, treated me better.
You said a lot there, and that was very mature the way you worded it. Do you think there would be a scenario where they could offer something to you and your compensation and a role in there that you would not want to leave, or is that just in you?
No, I've definitely thought about that, and read some business books on it, where it's a thing of, I would never want to leave any company on bad waters, but I would definitely be open to being more involved. If anything, that's what I feel like would have to keep me, is involvement, more so like equity. Like, if they want, if I'm willing to give my time, energy, and resources, to you, and they're training me and, giving me a, paycheck or whatever. But overall, it's like, I need some, I'm giving my skin in the game. I feel like they need to give me some too, so to speak. And I feel like that's fair in regards to, especially for those individuals that want more. If, like, I'm willing to do more and, go the extra mile, I would stick around with the company long term if I knew that they were willing to, fill in those gaps for me.
Yeah. And would that be translated as putting you behind a desk, or would you still be willing to get out there and turn wrenches as well?
I would like to be more out there. I mean, maybe in 20 years from now, but I do like moving. I like,
Working with your hands.
yeah, I like working with my hands. Maybe not so much the grunt work, but I would say, again, and I don't mind doing that work right now, because I feel like it's paying my dues. I feel like it's just out of respect. Like, if I see an older technician, like, I just can't have them outwork me. Like, they already got me in experience and wisdom. And I feel like like today, I was working with a guy who's been doing HVAC longer than I've been alive. And, like, I just had to, and he was helping me, and I was learning a lot, and it was great. I did learn a lot, but it's one of those things of, out of respect for him, of all the hours that he put in, I'm going to grab his bag. I'm going to do those extra little things just out of respect, because I know he's paid his dues. And so in the sense, if, maybe one day, if I'm still doing it, I would like to see that hopefully in the future, the next generation would kind of have a little bit of that in them, and they would, kind of have the same mentality. But, as for me right now, that's just kind of how I am. But
Yeah. David, you've been awesome. I appreciate you being candid, being open, sharing things that I know you didn't drop names or anything like that, but still being vulnerable and putting yourself out there, because these are conversations that really need to be had. And I'm hoping that you'll come back and we can pick this back up. I really appreciate you.
Oh, no, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, guys, Pete Ramsey here from HVAC Greatness once again. Guys, if you enjoyed this conversation, drop some comments below this. YouTube has since added a category for podcasting. So we're going to be doing these more regularly. Let's get some more technicians in here. Let's get some comfort advisors in here. Let's get some business owners in here. Let's get some other professionals in here and let's talk about this stuff. And let's see if we can't find our individual greatness. And let's start with you. Pete Ramsey here. I'll see you on the next one.
Hey, it's Pete. A quick thank you for joining me today on HVAC Greatness, or maybe just letting me keep you company as you're out running about. Either way, I sincerely hope that you picked up on something today that might help you and your business progress on your journey to HVAC greatness. Want more? Make sure we stay on the air. Share the podcast with a friend. Rate and review it. Be sure to subscribe to our email list at hvacgreatness.com so that you don't miss anything. This is Pete Ramsey signing out and reminding you why your customers love your business and what makes your company great. In one word, you. So let's keep refining your already good image and make it truly great.